Hey guys, Ponce here on the PBE, here to let you guys know about a potential nerf to everyone's favorite split push item, Zz'Rot Portal, or Zz'Rot Portal, or Zz'Rot Portal, or however the hell you want to pronounce it. I say Zz'Rot Portal. So anyway, taking a quick look at the item itself, you'll notice that the cooldown for it has actually been lowered. It's gone down to 120 seconds, but the duration, so once you plunk it down, it only lasts 120 seconds. So it still lasts the full duration, or rather, you can always have one up. However, you just basically need to keep plunking it down more often. It's a bit less of a kind of a fire and forget sort of thing. It requires a little bit more management. Not a massive amount, I suppose, but more than before. And you also, like, if you plunk it down and go somewhere else, it's not going to last long enough. Now, the reason I'm talking about this here is actually I find that this change rather curious, in the sense that it seems less like, at least to me anyway, like a raw balance change in sort of a more traditional sense, and more so kind of seems like a nuisance balance change. It's almost like a quality of life, like make the game slightly less annoying sort of thing. Because really that's all I've ever found this item, for the most part. It's annoying. It just kind of sticks around, you got to deal with it. But, it doesn't tend to have sort of like massive impact in the game like a lot of other sort of, directly, raw stat sort of items would. And I find that kind of funny because it almost seems like an analogy for the strategy of split pushing in and of itself. I've always found it more of a nuisance and kind of irritating, more than kind of a direct game impacting, game winning sort of strategy. More something that tends to draw things out for longer periods of time. At least that's my take on it. I'm not sure exactly what Riot... I'm not in Riot's head here, so, I don't... Or heads, or whatever you want to say. So I don't know the exact reasoning behind this and all that. But again, that's sort of my take on it. So that actually reminded me that I have actually an old video. It actually dates back to almost 2 years now. Maybe more than 2 years? But anyway, where I talk about the concept of how to counter split pushing. And so I went back and looked at that video, and it seemed relatively serviceable to me, still to this date. Like, I think it stands the test of time. Obviously, the game's changed around a bit, so, context may shift a bit, but the general principle is more or less the same. So, for those of you interested, that'll be in the description below, plus at the end screen, like there's, what do you call it, like an end title block thing you click on, says, here, watch this video. So I'll put one of those in there if anyone's interested. I'm not going to make a new one if we have a perfectly serviceable old video. Though I did find something rather curious about watching that old thing. Aside from the fact that actually when I click on it, the first thing I think I say in the video is say, hey, this is the first video of 2015, and this video is the first video of our post official schedule announcement thing I made yesterday. So almost 2017, close enough. But anyway, aside from that. Well, actually, before I talk about what I find curious, let me just give a little bit of background on the video. You guys can, again, watch it for yourselves. But essentially what it boils down to is I'm watching the screen like a hawk, because I know the Shaco's going to split push. I know how they think. And so I'm waiting for it. Instantly pops up on the screen, confirmed where he is, then I go into their team immediately because I know I can catch people out. And my sort of spiel is that the counter to split push is decisive action. You take action immediately, you don't hesitate, you don't get... Essentially, split push tends to work in this environment of essentially panic and indecision. It's like, oh, he's split pushing, but the enemy's also here. Do I go in right now? Oh, I don't know, because if I lose the fight, we're going to, like, die here, and then they'll take this tower, and then they'll take this tower, and then, meanwhile, you just lose the tower for free, everyone just sitting around doing nothing. The counter, again, to that, as I said in the other video, is you see the guy split pushing, and obviously you always can't. Sometimes the answer would be to go deal with him immediately. But whatever you do, just make a damn decision and go with it. And, it has to be the correct decision as well. But in this instance, it's like, oh, I see someone caught out. I can go in immediately. Let's start a fight. I know these guys are going to get chained in because they're nearby and will just, like, end up wiping. Which is, ends of spoilers, ends up happening. Because I, A, exploit their panicky nature, and B, was not indecisive about the split push. Now, here's the curious thing that I found about that video, kind of looking back on. I never made a follow-up video to that. I think this is the kind of thing I would talk about if I were to. But the main sort of counter-argument or criticism of my notion of what to do seemed to be... It wasn't very common. There was only a few people who said this, but there were a few people who were saying stuff like, oh, well, Cho'Gath, who got caught, I think it was, Cho'Gath shouldn't have just been caught, and the rest of his team shouldn't have followed him up. And it was all this kind of like shoulda, coulda, woulda, like ideal scenario sorts of things. But, that's the thing. I'm well aware how people are going to react, and I'm watching for these things. Split pushing and really essentially any other strategy, or really anything you can do in League of Legends, doesn't exist in this vacuum of absolute strategical perfection and certainty. When the Shaco split pushes, he doesn't control the rest of his team. This is not an RTS where you can control group the rest of the the people on the map and then tell them just like back as soon as there's any kind of trouble. Like, they're independently functioning beings who are going to get caught out of position, who might not exactly know where the Shaco is. He's got allies who think they can still win the fight, or and it's a relatively predictable thing. Like, people don't do stuff that's particularly surprising all that often in this game and in general. But again, a strategy must conform to the reality surrounding it. And too often I see just sort of, I'm guessing the people who are saying this are just like the real big split push fans who are just like, if I were to guess, maybe it's unfair of me to say that, but I kind of got that impression, who kind of use split push less as a tool and more of as almost like a mantra. It's just something you always do. Now, of course, certain champions are more suited to split push. For example, I'm sitting on Singed here. He's great at it. Now, a lot of the danger I'm seeing with champions like that, your Udyrs, your Nasai, all that stuff, is that split push tends to become this thing that you just do without thinking about whether or not it's the correct thing to do in that context. Now, again, granted, certain champions, because they're better at it, the context in which you do it increase compared to other champions. But a lot of times I'm seeing basically split push used less as a tool towards victory and more of a mindless, automatic reaction that's basically founded in greed. It's like, I'm going to get stronger. I don't actually really care what happens with the rest of the game. I'm kind of like in this weird farm mindset. But, the thing is, at the end of the day, if you have a billion farm, but everyone else on your team is completely worthless, you're going to lose. Like, it doesn't matter how much farm you have at the end of the game. League of Legends isn't dictated by your character's level or, how much money you have.
To shake or not to shake.
Or even if it's not just a tool of greed as opposed to a strategic option, a lot of times I'm seeing, again, with those sorts of champions, it's like there's less consideration about why they're split pushing at that point. It's just like, oh, I split push. Why am I split pushing? I don't know, I'm Singed.
It's nearly time.
So you can especially run into trouble, like, situations like that, because, again, if there's anyone decisive on the enemy team who knows how to exploit these things and just kind of goes straight in and, like, takes other objectives or wrecks your team in the meantime, the guy who split pushes without those sorts of dangers and consideration, and who's sitting there going, oh, well, my team shouldn't get caught. Well, they do get caught. That's the thing. Like, you can't prevent people from getting caught a lot of the time, barring, extremely well-coordinated play. We're not in the LCS here. We're all sitting on TeamSpeak or, I guess LCS teams don't use TeamSpeak. They're just talking over a mic. Whatever the hell they use, and then they're well-coordinated, and they have a very good understanding of zones of threat, and they keep track of flash cooldowns and all that stuff. There's just so many factors that are going to lead to very bad scenarios, which are outside of very predictable control. Anyway, that's sort of my thoughts on that. It's that it's a dangerous thing. Even when split pushing is the correct choice, you always have to keep in mind that even a correct tactical decision, if it results in defeat, is the incorrect decision, because of weird factors like, well, your team fucked up. Because again, I've talked about this concept on my stream numerous times, where it's like, well, I might make what's tactically the correct decision by, trying to engage in a fight here. But if my team is, they're all in some sort of bronze coma and have no idea what they're doing, and I go in and they just end up standing there and running away, well, technically at the end of the day, I made the wrong decision in the sense that there was no backup. It might be bizarre and make absolutely no sense whatsoever they didn't follow up the fight, but it's something you do need to consider this possibility and sort of inform your future decisions on how to make fights. So, anyway. Like at the end of the day, if you don't win, whatever you do doesn't matter. Like, a strategy needs to result in victory or ultimate victory or moving towards a victory somehow. So anyway, that's just kind of a follow-up on the video that you guys probably haven't seen because it's extremely so old. But again, it'll be linked in the thing right after this or in the description below if you're interested. And of course, since this is part of my new schedule where I upload a video at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, unless I screwed this up somehow on day one, hopefully I didn't, I'm of course live streaming on twitch.tv/Ponce, because that's my schedule. I start at 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, except tomorrow on Sunday. I probably won't be doing that because we got some party stuff going on. But anyway, see you guys around. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.